Hello, brother friends and sister friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Heart Set Above podcast. Are you like me and struggle with this restlessness, this almost fear of not learning everything you should be learning or everything that's out there to learn? I feel like being in our modern world where so much information is accessible and I mean, even when you're mindlessly scrolling on social media, you're learning things. That's one of the things I can appreciate about social media is that I'm learning, whether it's learning from someone else's experience or learning from an expert in a field. Even as I'm mindlessly scrolling, I can be learning something. I think that is a benefit to kind of our modern world. I think one of the deficits that comes from that, one of the detriments that comes from that is it can make me feel this panic of, "Oh my gosh, in this 15 minutes of scrolling, I learned so much. What about the times that I'm not scrolling? There's so much to learn." And I think that's only exacerbated by things like there's so many podcasts out there that I wanna listen to. There's so many books out there that I wanna read, so many master classes that I wanna take. I remember, I mean, I'm still sort of in this fight, but I remember a couple of years ago being in this space with even my work. Constantly feel like I'm behind the curve and I need to catch up in order to learn what I should already know. It's not even what's out there more for me to learn. It's I should already know this and I'm behind. I need to frantically catch up. So if you are like me and you find yourself in this space, let me say something to you right now. My son is going through an autism evaluation and diagnosis, and of course, it's very emotional and it's very overwhelming on an informational level. There's just so much to learn, so much to know, and I definitely feel that panic of I'm behind the curve and I need to catch up to know what I should already know. And I'm fortunate enough to have so many wonderful friends and resources that have reached out and said, I'm here. I've gone through this. I've walked this path. Let me help you. And what I've realized is that I feel a bit of a barrier, a bit of a boundary there. Like, "Ugh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to know all that there is to know. I'm not ready to learn everything there is to learn because it's so overwhelming. I need to kind of put in some checkpoints. I just need to know what I need to know for the next month, for the next 3 months, for the next year of our life and my son's life. And then once we've crossed that bridge, then I need to know what's beyond that. And so in this sort of like these blockades that I've had in this information, I've found that I've been so overwhelmed by, I felt a little bit lost in this, and I've been so overwhelmed by too much information, information overload. There's so many resources, so many friends that I could turn to, so many organizations out there that I could turn to. And I started to feel really overwhelmed. Like, where do I even begin? Whose voice do I trust in this? Right? Like sometimes there's competing information out there. Where do I land in learning about my son, about what I should be doing, about what I should have him doing, and all this stuff, right? It's just too much information has become information overload and it's kind of paralyzed me in some ways. I feel that. And so what I just realized because my aunt reached out to me and she also has a child with autism. Of course, he's much older and she's walked this path decades before I have. And she reached out and she just put things in a way that I could really understand. And it sort of felt like she was putting down pavers, like building blocks for me, that I could start to walk this path a bit. Even in previously feeling so paralyzed in information overload. And so it made me think about back in ancient times, right, when Jesus was walking the earth and even before and after, there were rabbis that people would study under. And they would study the Torah, they would study the word of God under this rabbi. And I think this is true even in our modern society that there are so many resources to learn about God, about the Bible, about the word, about Christian living. I can feel information overload in that as well. And I think that there's something to choosing a rabbi. to learn under. Of course, in our modern world, maybe it means choosing a certain podcast for a certain season of your life, or choosing a certain author or book or masterclass for that season of your life. But I wonder if my previous way of going about things, right? Just trying to drink out of the fire hose and learn so much about everything all at once from all the masters, from all of the experts in certain fields, from all of the books and all of the podcasts that I feel like I should be listening to. If maybe there's something to saying, no, actually, I'm going to prune some of this. Not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's not that those aren't great resources. Those aren't great podcasts or books or master classes or experts to learn from. It's that I'm going to choose the space where it makes most sense for me. I'm going to choose that mouthpiece, that space to learn in this season of my life. And as my season of life changes and morphs and grows, maybe I'll choose a different one for a different season. But I actually think that there's maybe more benefit in pruning so many voices, so many competing ideas, and streamlining it a little bit. Maybe it's not just one podcast or one book, but maybe it's a couple instead of all of them, right? To make it a bit less overwhelming, and I think hopefully get us unstuck a little bit. It makes me think about this concept in therapy, in systems theory. It's called equifinality. And Equifinality, it was taught to me in school like this. If you looked up on MapQuest, for example, or Google Maps, how to get from your house to the mall, it would probably give you multiple routes how you could do that. And it would depend on if you want to avoid tolls, if you want to save the environment and use the least fuel that you can, if you want to maximize the time and get there in the least amount of time, right? Like there's lots of different ways that you could get to the same endpoint. And the same is true in therapy, that there are lots of different ways that you can get to whatever your goal is, whatever your hope is for therapy. And so that gave my spirit a lot of peace in going through my graduate program because when I thought, oh no, I need to become an expert in every single counseling theory, in every single therapeutic intervention, I eventually realized, no, equifinality exists. I can learn the interventions that make most sense to me and my clients, and I can learn about the theories that makes most sense to me and my clients, and we can achieve the same outcome as a different therapist who holds to a completely different worldview, a completely different set of therapeutic interventions and theories. We can both achieve the same outcome with our clients, healing, perspective, whatever their goal is. And this was never more clear for me than when I was doing my internship in my grad program, and I had to sit in with a therapist. And this therapist was very different from me. She was much more abrasive and more of like a Carl Whitaker, if you're familiar, right? Like this very abrasive, very kind of stirring the pot, making the emotions rise. That is not really how I do therapy. And so I remember I would be sitting there and she'd be interacting with her client, and I would be thinking alongside of her, what would I say if I was if I was the acting therapist here? What question would I ask? What intervention would I use? What perspective would I highlight? And every single time, this therapist that I was shadowing would say something different than I would have. And I started to think, oh no, I'm going to be a terrible therapist because I wouldn't say that. That's not how I would go about it. And by the end of the session, it never failed. Every single time, her session with that client would get to the place where I hoped it would get to if it were me and this client interacting. And so I realized, like, wow, you can say a totally different set of words or questions or insights and perspectives or interventions and get to the same ending point as someone who would use a completely different set of tactics. And so that was so relieving to me in my early walk or in my early experience of being a therapist. And I want to offer that to you. If you're feeling overwhelmed in your need to understand so many different theories, so many different perspectives on God or on whatever it is in your own life, that you're feeling that I'm behind the eight ball and I need to catch up to where I need to be, let me encourage you with the concept of equifinality. Equifinality is not even a new concept. This concept is shown in the Bible, right? In Ecclesiastes, it says that there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new that you can learn from any experts that exist now that you could not have learned in ancient times or any time between ancient times and now, right? So just because it's coming from a different set of perspectives, a different worldview, different words, a different way of communicating it, doesn't mean that the concept is new. So that feels relieving to me in my own walk with autism, with faith, with my Christian journey with God. It feels very relieving to know that I don't need to learn from a certain rabbi, from a specific expert, from a specific podcast or book about certain things about God or his character or my life with him. There's nothing new under the sun. I could learn that from any, from a multiple, from a wide array of resources. So I hope that will relieve you as maybe you're feeling paralyzed in information overload and paralyzed by that panic, that earthly panic of striving toward knowing what we think we ought to know. I think, I don't know, I don't have any research to back this up, but I can just say anecdotally from my own life, the best way that I've been able to learn about God, and learn some of those concepts is through the Spirit, is just through knowing Him experientially. And so I think that all is enhanced and honed by things like podcasts and books and experts. Um, but it doesn't replace that experiential knowing. It only enhances it. It doesn't create that experiential knowing. So I hope that will relieve you and encourage you in your own journey, that maybe there's more benefit to pruning all the voices, all the influences that you have in your ear right now, streamlining them a bit, learning to experientially know God first, but then through that experiential knowing of Him, enhancing it with certain experts or books or podcasts or whatever it may be that resonate with you in that season of your life.